The courthouse steps felt like ice under my worn boots, October wind cutting through my jacket like it had a personal grudge. I clutched the crumpled papers in my fist. $4.2 million house, gone. My kids, gone. 43 years of marriage, and my own son just handed it all to his wife's lawyer like I was some stranger off the street. Behind me, Tom and Jessica were probably shaking hands, maybe even smiling. 42 years I spent raising that boy, teaching him right from wrong, and this is what I get. The old Ford pickup coughed to life when I turned the key, same reliable truck that never let me down, unlike some people. I should have been looking for a shelter, a friend's couch, anything. Instead, I found myself driving toward the other side of town, toward my mother's empty house. Don't know why. Maybe because she was the only person who ever saw Jessica for what she really was. The lawyer's handshake felt like a dead fish. Sorry it went this way, Frank. You can appeal, but with the power of attorney documents, Mr. Peterson's words trailed off like he was already thinking about his next case. Tom stood 20 feet away, adjusting his tie. Same tie I bought him for his first job interview at the plant. Jessica had her arm looped through his, whispering something that made her smile. That smile, like a cat with canary feathers stuck to its whiskers. Dad? Tom finally walked over, Jessica trailing behind. You know this is for the best. The house is too big for you now, and with Mom gone, he shrugged like we were talking about selling an old lawnmower. Your mother loved that house. My voice came out rougher than I intended. Built the garden herself, painted every room twice. It's just a house, Frank. Jessica stepped forward, her voice dripping with fake concern. At your age, you need something more manageable. We're thinking of a nice assisted living place. I'm 68, not 98. But you're alone now, Tom said. What if something happens? What if you fall? I looked at my son, really looked at him. When did his eyes get so cold? When did he start talking to me like I was a burden instead of the man who taught him to ride a bike, to change a tire, to treat people with respect? I can take care of myself. Can you? Jessica's voice had an edge now. When's the last time you balanced a checkbook? Handled insurance? Tom's been managing everything since the funeral. That was true. After Rose died, I couldn't focus on much of anything. Bills, paperwork, phone calls. It all felt like swimming through mud. Tom had stepped in, said he'd handle things until I got back on my feet. I thought he was being a good son. The parking lot was half empty now. A few stragglers from other court cases walked past, probably wondering what family drama they were witnessing. Mrs. Chen from my old neighborhood was there. She'd been fighting her landlord about a broken heater. She gave me a little wave, then looked away quick when she saw Tom and Jessica. We've already spoken to Sunset Manor, Jessica continued. They have a lovely room available. 3 meals a day, activities, people your own age, people my own age who are dying. Tom sighed. Dad, be reasonable. Reasonable? The word tasted bitter. Reasonable would have been talking to me before you sold my house. Reasonable would have been asking what I wanted instead of deciding for me. You weren't thinking straight, Tom said. You haven't been since Mom died. We were protecting you. Protecting me? From what? From living in my own house? From making my own decisions? From having a say in my own life? I looked at the crumpled papers in my hand. 43 years of marriage, and everything Rose and I built together was gone. Just like that. Legal papers with my signature that Tom had gotten when I was so deep in grief I could barely remember my own name. I trusted you. The words came out quiet, but they hit harder than shouting would have. Tom's face softened for just a second. Dad, I know this is hard. Do you? I stuffed the papers in my jacket pocket. Do you really know what it's like to lose everything in one morning? Because I'm just starting to figure it out. I walked toward my truck without another word. Behind me, I heard Jessica say something to Tom, but I couldn't make out the words over the blood pounding in my ears. The Ford started on the second try, reliable as sunrise, unlike the people who were supposed to love you. I should have driven to the homeless shelter downtown, or called my sister Mary, or figured out where a man with nothing was supposed to sleep tonight. Instead, I found myself heading toward Maple Street, toward the little white house where my mother had lived for 37 years until she passed 6 months ago. The house had been sitting empty since the funeral, waiting for me to decide what to do with it. Tom had offered to handle the sale for me, just like he'd handled everything else. Maybe it was time I started handling things myself. The key to Mom's front door still hung on my keychain, right next to the house key that didn't open anything anymore. Funny how a piece of metal could go from unlocking your whole life to being just dead weight in your pocket. I sat in the truck for a long minute, staring at the little white house. The porch needed painting, and the mailbox was starting to lean, but it still looked like home, more like home than that assisted living place Jessica had picked out for me. The neighbors were watching. Mrs. Patterson from next door, no relation, just shared the name, was peeking through her kitchen curtains. Bob the mailman was taking his sweet time with the house across the street, probably wondering what the hell Frank Patterson was doing at his dead mother's place instead of moving into his fancy new assisted living room. I climbed out of the truck and walked up the front steps. Each board creaked the same way it had when I was 12 years old, coming home late from fishing at Miller's Pond. Mom used to say those creaks were her early warning system. She always knew when I was trying to sneak in. The front door stuck the way it always did. You had to lift the handle just a little and push with your shoulder. Tom never could get the hang of it, always made him mad as a wet hen. "Why don't you just fix the damn door, Grandma?" he'd say. And Mom would smile and tell him some things were worth keeping just the way they were. Inside, the house smelled like vanilla candles and old coffee, with just a hint of the lavender soap Mom used to wash her hands. I stood in the doorway for a moment, letting the smell wrap around me like a hug. The living room looked exactly the same. Mom's recliner still faced the old Zenith television. Her reading glasses were still on the side table next to a half-finished crossword puzzle. The family photos lined the mantelpiece, me and Rose on our wedding day, Tom's high school graduation, Christmas mornings when he still believed in Santa Claus and his old man. I picked up one of the photos. Tom couldn't have been more than 8, grinning with his 2 front teeth missing, holding up a fish we'd caught at the lake. He'd been so proud of that little bluegill. "Dad, look! I caught one all by myself!" When did I lose that boy? When did he turn into the man who could look me in the eye and take everything I'd worked for? Maybe it started when he married Jessica. Mom had never said much about her, but I remembered the way her mouth would get tight whenever Jessica's name came up. "That girl's got expensive tastes," she'd said once. "Hope Tom's ready to work hard to keep her happy." I'd thought Mom was just being protective, old-fashioned. Now I wondered if she'd seen something I'd missed. I walked into the kitchen and put on a pot of coffee, same Mr. Coffee machine Mom had used for 20 years. While it brewed, I opened the refrigerator out of habit. Empty, of course, except for a box of baking soda and a bottle of vanilla extract that was probably older than Tom. That's when I saw it. Mom's journal, sitting open on the kitchen table like she'd just stepped away for a minute. I didn't remember seeing it there during the funeral preparations, but then again, I hadn't been seeing much of anything clearly those first few weeks. The entry was dated 3 weeks before she died. "Frank's looking so tired lately. That daughter-in-law of his has been pushing him to sign papers. Says it's for his own good. I don't like it. A woman doesn't just marry a man. She marries his family, his history, his responsibilities. Jessica's never understood that. She sees Frank's house, Frank's savings, Frank's future, and she wants to manage it all. Like Frank's not smart enough to handle his own life. I tried to warn him, but he won't listen. Says I'm just an old woman who doesn't understand modern marriage. Maybe I don't. But I understand gold diggers. And I understand men who are too good-hearted to see what's right in front of them. If something happens to me, Frank's going to be all alone with those two. I need to do something. I need to make sure he's protected." I sat down hard in Mom's kitchen chair, the coffee forgotten. She'd known. Somehow she'd seen what was coming before I did. I flipped back through the pages. Entry after entry about Jessica's behavior, Tom's increasing distance, the way they'd started making decisions about my life without asking me first. Mom had been keeping track, writing it all down, like evidence. The last entry was dated the day before she went to the hospital. "Frank came by today. Jessica called while he was here, demanding to know why he wasn't home to sign some insurance papers. Didn't even ask how he was doing, just angry that he wasn't where she expected him to be. The way she talked to him, like he was a child who'd wandered off. I've made my decision. Frank doesn't know it yet, but I've got an insurance policy for him. Something Jessica and Tom will never see coming. It's all arranged. All Frank has to do is look in the right place when the time comes. I pray he forgives me for not telling him sooner. But some things a mother has to handle herself. An insurance policy. I read the entry 3 more times, but Mom hadn't written any details. Just that cryptic mention of looking in the right place. I walked through the house, room by room, looking for anything that might be what she was talking about. Her bedroom dresser, the hall closet, even the old hope chest in the spare room. Nothing but the usual things you'd expect to find in an elderly woman's house. Then I remembered the basement. I'd been down there maybe 5 times in my whole life. Mom always said it was just storage, old furniture, and Christmas decorations. But as I stood at the top of the basement stairs, looking down into the darkness, I realized I'd never actually explored it properly. The wooden steps creaked under my weight, same as the front porch. I pulled the chain for the bare bulb, and yellow light flooded the basement. It wasn't what I remembered. Instead of dusty furniture and cobwebs, I found filing cabinets, 3 of them, lined up against the far wall like soldiers. Each drawer was labeled in Mom's careful handwriting. Frank's records, Tom's records, financial documents, legal papers. My hands were shaking as I opened the first drawer. The first filing cabinet was full of papers I'd never seen before. Bank statements going back 20 years, all in Mom's name. Investment records, stock certificates, insurance policies, stuff that looked official and important, but none of it made sense. According to these papers, Mom had been worth a lot more than the small pension and Social Security I thought she lived on. A lot more. I pulled out a bank statement from last month, the month before she died. The balance made me sit down hard on an old wooden crate. $247,000. In a savings account I'd never heard of. "What the hell, Mom?" I said to the empty basement. I opened the second drawer. More of the same, but these were investment accounts. Stock portfolios with companies I recognized. IBM, General Electric, Ford Motor Company. Conservative, steady investments that had been growing for decades. The kind of investments a smart woman would make if she wanted to build something for her family without anyone knowing about it. The third drawer was labeled Frank's Protection. Inside, I found copies of every document Tom had asked me to sign since Rose died. Every single one. And next to each document, Mom had written notes in her careful handwriting. Power of attorney gives Tom complete control of Frank's finances. Property transfer removes Frank's name from house deed. Medical directive allows Tom to make all health decisions for Frank. Investment authorization lets Tom access Frank's retirement accounts. Each note was followed by Mom's assessment. Dangerous. Unnecessary. Designed to isolate Frank from his own assets. At the bottom of the drawer was a manila envelope marked, "For Frank's eyes only." Inside was a letter in Mom's handwriting, dated the week she went into the hospital. "My dear son, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and you've found your way down here like I hoped you would. First thing you need to know, I'm sorry. Sorry for not telling you what I suspected about Tom and Jessica while I was still alive to help you fight it. But I knew you wouldn't believe me. You've always seen the best in people, especially family. It's one of the things I love most about you, and it's what made you so vulnerable to them. The money in these accounts is yours now. It was always meant to be yours. I never told you about it because I wanted you to live your own life, make your own way, be proud of what you built with Rose. But I also knew there might come a time when you'd need protection from people who should have been protecting you. That time has come. Check behind the water heater. I left something there that's going to change everything. And Frank, don't feel guilty about what you have to do next. A mother's job is to protect her children even when they're 68 years old and think they don't need protecting anymore. Love always, Mom. P.S. The combination to the safe is your birthday. Always has been. Safe? What's safe? I walked over to the old water heater in the corner. It was the same ancient tank that had been there since I was a kid, probably installed sometime in the 1970s. But when I squeezed behind it, I found something that definitely hadn't been there when I was 12. A small wall safe built right into the concrete foundation, the kind of safe a person installs when they want to hide something important, really important. The combination lock was waiting for me, just like Mom's letter said. I tried my birthday, 06 to 1555. The first two numbers clicked into place easy as pie, but my hands were shaking so bad by the third number that I had to stop and take a breath. 6, 1, 5, 5. The safe door swung open with a quiet click. Inside was another manila envelope, thick with papers, and underneath that, something I'd never expected to see in my mother's basement: cash. Neat stacks of $100 bills, more money than I'd ever seen in one place outside of a bank. But it was the envelope that really got my attention. Written across the front in Mom's handwriting, Frank's evidence file, use when ready. I opened it with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. The first document was a copy of a different will, Mom's will, but not the simple one-page document we'd read at the lawyer's office after her funeral. This one was 15 pages long, notarized, and witnessed by two people I didn't recognize. According to this will, Mom was leaving me everything: the secret bank accounts, the investment portfolios, and something else that made my heart skip: her house. Not just the little white house on Maple Street, but the property it sat on. 3 acres of land right in the heart of town. Land that had been in our family for 4 generations. Land that was worth a fortune if someone wanted to develop it. But there was more. Page after page of documented conversations, photocopied letters, even printed emails between Tom and Jessica that Mom had somehow gotten hold of. They painted a picture that made my stomach turn. Tom owed money, a lot of money. Gambling debts, according to the documents. He'd been betting on football games, horse races, anything that would give him a quick payout. Jessica knew about it, and she'd been pushing him to solve the problem by getting control of my assets. There was an email from Jessica to Tom dated just 2 weeks ago. Your father's house is worth $4.2 million, plus his retirement accounts and your grandmother's inheritance. We're looking at enough to cover your debts and set us up for life. But you have to move fast. He's starting to ask questions about the papers you had him sign. Tom's response: I know, but what if he fights us? What if he gets a lawyer? Jessica: he won't. He's a broken old man who just lost his wife. He'll do whatever you tell him to do. Trust me. I read that exchange 3 times before the words really sank in. They'd planned this. My son and his wife had sat down and planned to steal everything I'd worked for my whole life. And they'd done it while I was still grieving for Rose, when I was too lost in my own pain to see what was happening right in front of me. At the bottom of the envelope was one more document, a business card for a lawyer in the city, Eleanor Morrison, attorney at law, and a handwritten note from Mom. Call her. She's been waiting to hear from you. I sat on that basement floor for a long time, staring at Eleanor Morrison's business card. The concrete was cold through my jeans, and the single light bulb cast long shadows that made the filing cabinets look like tombstones. But I couldn't move, couldn't think past the weight of what I'd just learned. My son had stolen from me, not just money or property, but something deeper. He'd stolen my trust, my dignity, my right to make decisions about my own life. And he'd done it while I was grieving for the woman who'd been my partner for 43 years. The cash in the safe was still there, waiting. I counted it twice before I believed it. $50,000 in hundreds, rubber-banded in neat stacks. Mom's emergency fund, apparently. Money she'd saved for a crisis she'd seen coming even when I couldn't. I picked up the phone card again. Eleanor Morrison. Mom had trusted her enough to plan this whole thing, which meant she had to be someone special. But it was almost 6 o'clock, and most lawyers went home at 5. I called anyway. Morrison Law Office, this is Eleanor speaking. The voice was warm, professional, with just a hint of a southern accent. Not what I'd expected from a big city attorney. Ma'am, this is Frank Patterson. I think my mother left me your number. A pause. Then, Frank, oh my goodness, I've been wondering when you'd call. Rose told me you'd find your way to the basement eventually. How are you holding up, honey? Honey, When was the last time someone had called me that? Not since Rose died, that was for sure. I'm, I don't know what I am. Confused, mostly. Mad as hell, if I'm being honest. I imagine so. Finding out your own family has been planning to rob you blind tends to have that effect. Have you read through everything Rose left for you? Most of it. Enough to know my son's been lying to me for months. Oh, it's been longer than that, Frank. Rose started documenting Tom's behavior 2 years ago. She could see which way the wind was blowing, even if you couldn't. 2 years. Tom had been planning this for 2 years, waiting for the right moment to strike. Waiting for me to be vulnerable enough, grief-stricken enough to sign away my entire life without reading the fine print. Mrs. Morrison. Eleanor, please. Eleanor, what exactly did my mother ask you to do? To protect you. Rose was one of the smartest women I've ever known, and she could see that Tom and Jessica were positioning themselves to take advantage of you after she was gone. So we made a plan. What kind of plan? The kind that's going to give you your life back if you want it. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? There are some things we need to discuss that are better done in person. I, yes. Where? Do you know Mickey's Diner on 5th Street? 9 o'clock? Order the coffee. It's terrible, but the pancakes are worth the trip. I almost smiled. Almost. How will I know you? I'll be the black woman in a business suit reading a newspaper and drinking that terrible coffee. Trust me, I'll stand out. After I hung up, I sat back down on the basement floor and read through Mom's evidence file one more time. The picture it painted got clearer and uglier with each document. Tom hadn't just been planning to steal from me. He'd been systematically isolating me from my friends, my neighbors, anyone who might ask questions about the sudden changes in my life. The assisted living facility Jessica had picked out wasn't just expensive, it was 2 hours away from everyone I knew, far enough that visits would be inconvenient, infrequent, eventually non-existent. There was a brochure for the place tucked into the file. Sunset Manor. The photos showed smiling elderly people playing bingo and eating pudding cups, but the fine print told a different story. Once you signed the residency agreement, all financial decisions had to be approved by your designated family member. No personal vehicles allowed. Visitors restricted to certain hours. Essentially, a prison with better wallpaper. And there was something else. A copy of a letter Tom had sent to the facility's administrator, dated 3 weeks ago. Dear Mr. Richardson, thank you for accommodating our special circumstances regarding my father's placement at Sunset Manor. As discussed, Frank Patterson suffers from early-stage dementia and can become agitated when discussing financial matters. For his own protection and peace of mind, all questions about his assets should be directed to me as his power of attorney. We appreciate your discretion in this matter. Sincerely, Tom Patterson. Dementia. They were going to tell everyone I had dementia. That explained why Jessica had been so confident about their plan. Who would believe the confused ramblings of an old man with memory problems? Except I didn't have memory problems. I'd never been sharper in my life. And now, I had the documentation to prove it. I climbed back up the basement stairs with Mom's evidence file tucked under my arm and the cash in my jacket pocket. The house felt different now. Not just empty, but full of secrets, full of my mother's love and protection reaching out from beyond the grave. In the kitchen, I made myself a sandwich with some bread I found in the freezer and a can of tuna from the pantry. It wasn't much, but it was the first meal I'd eaten all day that I'd chosen for myself, that I'd paid for with my own money, that nobody had permission to approve or disapprove. While I ate, I thought about tomorrow's meeting with Eleanor Morrison, about what Mom's plan might be, about whether I had the strength to fight back against my own son. The answer came to me as I was washing my plate in Mom's old porcelain sink, looking out the window at the neighborhood where I'd grown up. Tom and Jessica thought they were dealing with a broken old man who'd roll over and play dead for them. They'd never met Rose Patterson's son. Mickey's Diner looked like it hadn't changed since 1975, which was probably the last time I'd eaten there. Red vinyl booths, black and white checkered floor, and a waitress who called everyone Han, whether they were 18 or 80. The coffee was every bit as bad as Eleanor had promised. She was easy to spot, mid-50s, sharp navy suit, reading the morning paper like she owned the place. When I walked over to her booth, she looked up and smiled. "You must be Frank. You look just like Rose described you. Stubborn chin and worried eyes." "Yes, ma'am. Thank you for meeting me. Sit down, honey. Order some breakfast. We've got a lot to talk about." The waitress came by and I ordered pancakes I didn't want, just to have something to do with my hands. Eleanor folded her newspaper and leaned forward. "First thing you need to understand, Frank, your mother was brilliant. What she put together for you isn't just evidence of what Tom and Jessica have done. It's a complete legal strategy to get your life back." "How complete?" "Complete enough that when we're finished, Tom and Jessica won't just lose control of your assets. They'll face criminal charges for elder abuse and fraud." The words hit me like a physical blow. Criminal charges. My son could go to prison. Eleanor must have seen something in my face. "I know it's hard. Rose struggled with it too, but Frank, what they've done to you is a crime. Not just morally, but legally. And if we don't stop them now, they'll do it to someone else's father next." "What exactly are you proposing?" Eleanor opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder thick enough to choke a horse. "Your mother and I have been preparing this for 18 months. We have documented evidence of Tom's gambling debts, Jessica's manipulation tactics, and their systematic plan to isolate you from your support system. We also have this." She handed me a document I'd never seen before. My mother's real will, not the simple version Tom and I had read after her funeral, but a detailed 15-page document that left me everything. The house, the land, the secret accounts, even some investments I didn't know existed. Mom had two wills? She did. The simple one was designed to avoid probate complications and get you through the immediate aftermath of her death. This one is the real thing, and it makes you a wealthy man, Frank. Wealthy enough to fight back. I stared at the numbers on the investment summary. Between Mom's accounts and the property values, I was looking at close to $2 million. Money that was mine, free and clear, that Tom and Jessica knew nothing about. "There's something else," Eleanor continued. "Rose suspected Tom might try something dramatic after you discovered what he'd done, so she set up a little insurance policy." "What kind of insurance?" Eleanor smiled. "The kind that records phone conversations. Rose had a feeling Tom might call you after the courthouse hearing, maybe try to pressure you or threaten you. She wanted to make sure you had evidence of anything he said." She handed me a small recording device, no bigger than a pack of gum. "It's voice activated. Keep it in your pocket and it'll pick up any conversation within 10 feet. Completely legal in this state, as long as you're part of the conversation." I turned the device over in my hands. Such a small thing, but it felt heavy with possibility. Rose also mentioned something about a family gathering? Tom's birthday party. Next Saturday. Jessica's been planning it for weeks, invited the whole family. I paused. She specifically asked my sister Mary to make sure I'd be there. At the time, I thought she was being nice. I doubt Jessica does anything nice without an ulterior motive. What do you think she's planning? I thought about the email I'd read in Mom's basement about Tom's debts and their timeline for solving the problem. I think they're going to try to finish what they started, get me to sign something that gives them access to Mom's estate, or maybe commit me to that assisted living place. In front of the whole family? Makes sense, doesn't it? Easier to claim I'm incompetent if there are witnesses to back up their story. Poor Frank, he's just not himself since Rose died. We're only trying to help him. Eleanor nodded. That's exactly what Rose thought they'd try, which is why we're going to be ready for them. She pulled out another document, a court order signed by a judge I didn't recognize. "This freezes all your accounts pending a competency hearing. If Tom tries to access your money or sell your property, the bank will stop him. It also requires any changes to your living situation to be approved by the court." Can they do that? Just freeze everything? They can when there's evidence of financial elder abuse. And Frank, what Tom has done to you fits that definition perfectly. I read through the court order twice. It was like putting on armor I didn't know I needed. "There's one more thing," Eleanor said. "Rose left you a message. She recorded it the week before she went into the hospital." She handed me a small digital recorder, the kind people use for dictation. My hands were shaking as I pressed play. Mom's voice filled the diner booth, weak but determined. Frank, if you're hearing this, then everything I feared has come to pass. Tom has stolen from you, and you've found your way to the basement like I knew you would. I'm sorry, son. Sorry I couldn't protect you while I was alive, and sorry you have to fight this battle without me. But you're not alone. Eleanor will help you, and the family who really loves you will stand by you. Don't feel guilty about what you have to do. Sometimes the hardest thing about being a parent is letting your children face the consequences of their choices. Tom made his choice when he decided to steal from his father. Now you have to make yours. Fight back, Frank. Fight for your dignity, your independence, and your right to live your own life. You're stronger than you know, and you have more friends than you realize. I love you. Now go get your life back. I sat there listening to my mother's voice with tears running down my face, not caring who saw them. Eleanor handed me a napkin and waited while I pulled myself together. She was something else, your mother. She was the strongest person I ever knew, and the smartest. She loved you very much, Frank, and she wanted to make sure you had every weapon you needed for this fight. I looked at the evidence folder, the court orders, the recording device. Mom had thought of everything. What happens next? Next, you go to that birthday party. You let Tom and Jessica make their move, and when they do, you'll be ready for them. Eleanor leaned back in the booth, her coffee cup empty. One question, though. Are you prepared for this to get ugly? Because once we start, there's no going back. Tom is your son, and this is going to destroy your relationship with him. I thought about the email where Jessica called me a broken old man, about Tom lying to the assisted living facility, claiming I had dementia, about the years of manipulation and the systematic plan to steal everything I'd worked for. Eleanor, my relationship with Tom was destroyed the minute he decided to treat me like an enemy instead of his father. I'm just evening the odds. Saturday morning came gray and cold, the kind of October day that makes you want to stay inside with a cup of coffee and a good book. Instead, I was getting ready to walk into what felt like enemy territory, my son's house, my former house. I dressed carefully. Clean khakis, the blue button-down Rose always said brought out my eyes, and my good leather shoes. If this was going to be a showdown, I wanted to look like a man who still had his dignity intact. The recording device Eleanor had given me felt like a lead weight in my shirt pocket. I tested it 3 times that morning, making sure I knew how to activate it without being obvious. The court orders were folded in my jacket, along with copies of the most damning evidence from Mom's files. I drove slowly through the neighborhood where I'd lived for 23 years, past the Hendersons' house where I'd helped Jim build his deck, past the corner where Rose and I used to walk every evening after dinner, past the mailbox where Bob the mailman still waved, though he looked confused to see me driving by instead of living there. The house looked different with Tom and Jessica living in it. New shutters, a fancy mailbox, and landscaping that probably cost more than I used to spend on groceries in a month. Jessica's touch, no doubt. She'd always had expensive tastes. Cars lined the driveway and spilled onto the street. Tom's birthday party was in full swing, and by the looks of it, half the county was there. I recognized my sister Mary's Buick, my cousin Billy's pickup truck, and several vehicles that belonged to Rose's family. People I hadn't seen since the funeral were here to celebrate my son's birthday. I sat in my truck for a moment, gathering my courage. Through the living room window, I could see people laughing and talking, holding plates of food and bottles of beer. It looked like a normal family gathering, but I knew better now. Jessica met me at the front door, all smiles and fake concern. She was wearing a dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, and her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Frank, I'm so glad you could make it. Tom was worried you might not feel up to it. Wouldn't miss my son's birthday." "Of course not. You're such a good father." She touched my arm with fingers that felt cold even through my jacket. "How are you adjusting to your new living situation?" "I know it's been a big change." New living situation. Like I'd chosen to be homeless instead of having my house stolen out from under me. "Managing just fine, thanks." "Well, if you need anything at all, you know Tom and I are here for you." The recording device was already running. I wondered what Eleanor would think of Jessica's performance. "That's good to know." She led me through the house, chattering about the party preparations and how hard she'd worked to make everything perfect for Tom's special day. I noticed she'd redecorated the living room. Gone were the family photos Rose had carefully arranged over the years, replaced with abstract art that looked expensive and cold. The kitchen was full of people I recognized. Mary gave me a big hug and whispered that she was glad to see me. Cousin Billy slapped my back and asked how I was holding up. Rose's sister Martha took one look at me and got tears in her eyes. "Frank, honey, you look so thin. Are you eating enough?" Before I could answer, Jessica appeared at my elbow. "Frank's been having some trouble managing his daily routine since Rose passed. It's completely normal at his age, especially after such a significant loss. At his age, like 68 was ancient instead of just getting started. I'm managing fine," I said again. "Of course you are," Jessica replied, but her tone suggested otherwise. "It's just that sometimes we don't realize when we need help. That's why family is so important." Tom appeared from the backyard, carrying a beer and wearing the kind of smile politicians use when they're lying to voters. He looked older than his 42 years, and there were stress lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 6 months ago. "Dad, you made it!" He gave me a hug that felt like a performance for the audience. Over his shoulder, I could see people watching us, probably wondering how the grieving widower was holding up. "Happy birthday, son." "Thanks. I'm glad you're here. There's something I wanted to talk to the family about today, and it's important that you be part of it." There it was. The real reason Jessica had made sure I'd attend. Whatever they had planned, they needed me present for it to work. "What kind of something?" Tom glanced at Jessica, who gave him an encouraging nod. "Family business. Financial stuff. You know how boring that can be, but it's important we all understand where things stand." Financial stuff. I bet it was. "Maybe we should wait until after the party," I suggested. "Don't want to spoil the celebration with business talk." "Actually," Jessica chimed in, "it might be better to get it out of the way. Clear the air, then we can all just enjoy the rest of the day." The rest of the family was starting to pay attention to our conversation. Mary looked concerned. Billy was frowning. Martha had that expression she got when she smelled something rotten. "What kind of financial stuff?" Mary asked. Tom set down his beer and straightened his shoulders, like he was getting ready to make a speech. Which, I realized, he probably was. "Well, as you all know, Dad's been going through a difficult time since Mom passed. Grief affects people differently, and sometimes older folks need help managing their affairs when they're not thinking clearly." Older folks, not thinking clearly. The recording device in my pocket was capturing every word. "Dad's been struggling with some basic daily tasks," Tom continued. "Forgetting to pay bills, having trouble balancing his checkbook, that sort of thing. Jessica and I have been trying to help, but it's become clear that he needs more support than we can provide." The room was getting quiet. People were setting down their drinks and plates, sensing that something important was happening. "So we've made arrangements for Dad to move into a very nice assisted living facility, Sunset Manor. It's a beautiful place where he'll have all the help he needs, and he won't have to worry about maintaining a house or managing finances." "Tom," Mary said slowly, "your father seems perfectly capable to me." "Of course he does," Jessica said with that fake sympathetic voice. "People with early-stage dementia can seem fine in social situations, but the day-to-day reality is very different." Dementia. They were really going to claim I had dementia. I felt the anger building in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Let them dig their own grave a little deeper." "What does Frank think about this?" Billy asked, looking directly at me. All eyes turned my way. This was it. The moment I'd been preparing for since that meeting with Eleanor. I looked around the room at the faces of people who'd known me for decades. People who'd worked with me, laughed with me, trusted me with their own problems over the years. Then I looked at my son, who was staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Fear? Guilt? Or just annoyance that his plan wasn't going as smoothly as he'd hoped. "Well," I said slowly, "that's an interesting question, Billy. What do I think?" I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the manila envelope Eleanor had prepared for me. The room was so quiet I could hear the ice maker cycling in the refrigerator. "I think," I said, that it's time everyone knew the truth about what's been happening here. Tom's face went pale. Jessica took a step back, her fake smile finally slipping. "Dad, what are you doing?" Tom asked. "What I should have done months ago, protecting myself." I opened the envelope and pulled out the first document, a copy of the email exchange between Tom and Jessica about my $4.2 million house and how I was too broken to fight them. "Mary, would you mind reading this out loud? My eyes aren't what they used to be." Mary took the paper, squinted at it for a moment, then looked up at me with shock. "Frank, are you sure you want me to?" "Read it." She cleared her throat. "Your father's house is worth $4.2 million. Plus his retirement accounts and your grandmother's inheritance. We're looking at enough to cover your debts and set us up for life. But you have to move fast. He's starting to ask questions about the papers you had him sign." The room erupted. Billy swore under his breath. Martha gasped. Several people started talking at once. "That's taken out of context," Tom said quickly. "Dad, you don't understand." "Keep reading, Mary." "I know, but what if he fights us? What if he gets a lawyer?" "That's Tom's response," Mary continued, her voice getting stronger. "He won't. He's a broken old man who just lost his wife. He'll do whatever you tell him to do. Trust me." That's Jessica. The room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the hardwood floor. Jessica's composure finally cracked. "Those emails are private correspondence taken without permission. This is harassment." "Actually," I said, pulling out another document, "it's evidence. Evidence of elder abuse, financial fraud, and conspiracy to commit theft." I handed the second paper to Billy. "This is a letter Tom sent to Sunset Manor, telling them I have dementia and that all questions about my finances should go through him." Billy read it silently, his face getting redder with each line. When he finished, he looked at Tom with disgust. "You told them your father has dementia. Tom, what the hell is wrong with you?" "It's not like that," Tom stammered. "Dad's been confused since Mom died. We were trying to protect him." "Protect me?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "By stealing my house? By lying to my family? By trying to lock me away in a nursing home 2 hours from everyone I know?" I pulled out the recording device and set it on the coffee table. Here's what protecting me really sounds like. I pressed play. Mom's voice filled the room, weak but determined. "Frank, if you're hearing this, then everything I feared has come to pass. Tom has stolen from you." As the recording played, I watched my son's face crumble. Jessica was backing toward the door, but Martha stepped in front of her. "You stay right where you are, young lady." When Mom's message finished, the room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Then Mary started crying. Not the soft tears of sadness, but the angry sobs of someone who'd been betrayed by people she trusted. "Tom," she said through her tears, "how could you do this to your own father after everything he's done for you?" "You don't understand," Tom said desperately. "I owe money, a lot of money. They were going to hurt Jessica if I didn't pay. So you decided to hurt me instead?" I kept my voice level, but inside I was shaking with rage. "You decided to steal everything your mother and I worked for, everything your grandmother saved, because you made bad bets on football games?" "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," Tom said. "I was going to pay you back. Once I got things straightened out." "With what money?" "You don't have a job, Tom. Haven't had one in 6 months. You've been living off what you stole from me." Billy stepped forward. "Is that true? You've been stealing from your father to pay gambling debts?" Tom looked around the room at the faces of his family, people who'd watched him grow up, who'd celebrated his wedding, who'd trusted him to do right by his father. The weight of their disappointment was crushing. "I made some mistakes," he whispered. "Mistakes?" Martha's voice could have cut glass. "Boy, stealing from your father isn't a mistake, it's a choice, a series of choices." Jessica finally spoke up, her voice sharp with desperation. "Frank, you're making this out to be worse than it is. We were trying to help you manage a difficult transition." "Help me?" I pulled out the final document, the financial records showing Tom's debts and the timeline of my asset transfers. "Help me by forging my signature on loan documents?" Help me by refinancing my house without my knowledge? Help me by cleaning out my savings account while I was planning your mother's funeral? The room exploded again. This time, people weren't just shocked. They were angry. Cousin Billy looked like he wanted to punch something. Mary was crying harder. Martha was muttering prayers and curses in equal measure. The police are already involved, I said quietly, and the room went silent again. Elder abuse is a felony in this state. Financial fraud is a felony. Conspiracy to commit theft is a felony. Tom's legs gave out. He sat down hard on the couch, his head in his hands. Dad, please. I know I screwed up, but I'm your son. You can't send me to prison. I didn't send you anywhere, Tom. You sent yourself the minute you decided I was an enemy instead of your father. Jessica made a break for the door, but Billy caught her arm. Where do you think you're going? This is insane, she said, struggling against his grip. Frank is having some kind of breakdown. He's been acting irrationally since Rose died. The only thing that's been irrational, I said, is trusting my own family not to stab me in the back. I looked around the room at the faces of people who'd known me for decades, people who'd never doubted my competence, my sanity, or my right to live my own life. For those of you wondering, I said, I'm not having a breakdown. I don't have dementia. I'm not incompetent. I'm just a man who trusted the wrong people and paid the price for it. Tom looked up at me, his eyes red with tears. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. What did you mean, Tom? What was the plan here? Lock me away in Sunset Manor and visit me on Christmas. Send me a card on my birthday while you're spending my money? I was going to take care of you. The way you took care of me when you sold my house. The way you took care of me when you told strangers I had dementia. The way you took care of me when you decided I was too stupid to manage my own life. Tom had no answer for that. Neither did Jessica, who'd stopped struggling against Billy's grip and was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. Here's what's going to happen, I said. The police will arrest you both within the next few days. You'll be charged with elder abuse and financial fraud. The court will reverse every document you tricked me into signing, and I'll get my life back. I looked directly at Tom. And you'll get the consequences you've earned. The police came on Tuesday morning, just like Eleanor said they would. I watched from Mom's front porch as 2 squad cars pulled up to my old house. Tom came out in handcuffs, his head down, while Jessica screamed at the officers that this was all a misunderstanding. The neighbors gathered in their yards, watching the show. Mrs. Patterson from next door shook her head sadly. Bob the mailman stopped his truck and stared. Word travels fast in a small town, and by now everyone knew what Tom and Jessica had done. Eleanor sat beside me on the porch swing, sipping coffee from one of Mom's old mugs. How are you feeling? Empty, I said, and it was the truth. Watching your own son get arrested isn't something you ever prepare for. No, I imagine not. But Frank, what they did to you was criminal. Literally criminal. I knew she was right, but it didn't make it hurt any less. The arraignment was scheduled for Thursday. Eleanor explained that Tom and Jessica would probably be released on bail, but they'd be forbidden from contacting me or accessing any of my assets. The court had already frozen all the accounts Tom had been using and started the process of reversing the property transfers. What about my house? You'll get it back. The sale was fraudulent since Tom didn't have legal authority to sell it. The buyers are furious, but they'll recover their money from Tom and Jessica's assets. Do they have any assets left? Eleanor smiled grimly. Jessica does. Turns out she's been hiding money in accounts under her maiden name, probably planning her exit strategy if things went bad. The police found about $200,000 she thought no one knew about. $200,000. Money that came from selling my house, my belongings, my life. By Wednesday, the whole family knew what was happening. Mary called 3 times to check on me. Billy stopped by with a casserole his wife had made and an offer to help with anything I needed. Even Martha, who lived 2 states away, called to tell me she was proud of me for fighting back. But it was my grandchildren's reaction that hit me hardest. Amy, Tom's 16-year-old daughter, showed up at Mom's house on Wednesday evening. She'd been crying, and her eyes were red and swollen. "Grandpa, can I talk to you?" I let her in and made hot chocolate the way Rose used to, with real milk and a dash of vanilla. We sat at Mom's kitchen table, and for a long time, neither of us said anything. "I don't understand," Amy finally said. "Why would Dad do this to you? How do you explain to a 16-year-old that her father chose gambling and greed over family? How do you tell her that the man who taught her to ride a bike had stolen everything from his own father? Sometimes people make bad choices, sweetheart, and sometimes those choices hurt the people they love. But you're his father. You raised him. You loved him. I still love him. That's what makes this so hard." Amy started crying again. "Everyone at school is talking about it. They're saying Dad's going to prison. He might. That depends on what he does next." "What do you mean?" I thought about that for a moment. Tom had two paths ahead of him. He could fight the charges, claim he was trying to help me, drag this out for years in court, or he could accept responsibility for what he'd done and try to make things right. Your dad has a choice to make. He can keep lying and fighting, or he can tell the truth and try to earn forgiveness. Would you forgive him if he told the truth? That was the question I'd been wrestling with since Saturday night. Could I forgive my son for betraying me so completely? Could I find a way past the hurt and anger to something that looked like a relationship? I don't know, honey. Forgiveness isn't the same as trust. Even if I forgave your dad, it would take a long time to trust him again, maybe forever. Amy nodded like she understood, even though I wasn't sure she really did. "Grandpa, are you going to be okay?" I looked around Mom's kitchen, the same kitchen where she'd fed me as a child, where she'd taught me right from wrong, where she'd planned my protection, even as she was dying. "Yeah, sweetheart, I'm going to be fine." And for the first time in months, I actually believed it. The trial was set for January. Eleanor said we had an airtight case, and she expected Tom and Jessica to plead guilty rather than face a jury. The evidence was overwhelming, and their lawyers knew it. Tom was staying with his brother in the next county, working construction to pay for his legal fees. Jessica had moved back to her mother's house and hired an expensive lawyer who was already talking about plea bargains. I got my house back 2 weeks after the arrest. Walking through those rooms again felt like visiting a museum of my old life. Everything was different. New furniture, new paint, new everything. It didn't feel like home anymore, so I decided to stay in Mom's house. 3 acres of land in the heart of town, close to everything I needed, full of memories that didn't hurt. Eleanor helped me set up a trust for my grandchildren's education and invested the rest of Mom's money in conservative accounts that would keep growing without me having to think about it. I was rich now, though it didn't feel like wealth. It felt like responsibility. Mom had saved all that money not for herself, but for me. And I'd use it not just for me, but for the family members who'd stayed loyal, who'd chosen love over greed. On Thanksgiving, I invited everyone to Mom's house. Mary brought her famous stuffing. Billy brought his guitar and played the old songs we all knew. Martha came up from Arkansas with photo albums and stories about when Tom was little. We talked about Mom a lot that day, about her wisdom, her strength, her ability to see through people's pretenses to who they really were. We talked about the importance of family, real family, the kind that protects and supports instead of exploiting and betraying. Amy came to dinner. Her mother had dropped her off and driven away without a word. The girl looked lost, caught between her father's disgrace and her need for family connection. "How's your dad doing?" I asked as we were cleaning up. "He's working construction, says the physical work helps him think. He's been going to Gamblers Anonymous meetings." "That's good. It's a start. He asks about you sometimes, wonders if you hate him." I dried a plate slowly, thinking about how to answer that. "I don't hate him, Amy. I'm disappointed in him. I'm hurt by what he did. But hate? No. He's still my son, even if I don't know who he is anymore." Amy nodded, and I could see her filing that away for the next time she talked to her father. Later that evening, after everyone had gone home, I sat in Mom's recliner with a cup of coffee and thought about the past 6 months. The betrayal, the discovery, the fight to get my life back. It had aged me, but it had also taught me something important. Family isn't just blood, it's choice, it's loyalty, it's standing by someone when it's hard, protecting them when they're vulnerable, respecting them even when you disagree. Tom had forgotten that. Maybe someday he'd remember. Maybe someday we'd find a way back to being father and son instead of just two men who shared a name and a painful history. But that was up to him now. I'd done all I could do. Spring came early that year, and with it, something I hadn't expected, a letter from Tom. It arrived on a Tuesday morning in March, 6 months after his arrest. The envelope was addressed in his careful handwriting, the same neat script I'd taught him when he was 7 years old and struggling with his homework. I sat at Mom's kitchen table with my coffee and stared at that envelope for a long time before opening it. Dad, I don't know if you'll read this, but I had to try. I've been in counseling for 4 months now, working on the gambling addiction and trying to understand how I became someone who could steal from his own father. My lawyer wants me to write you an apology letter for the sentencing hearing. This isn't that letter. This is me trying to tell you the truth about what happened and why I did what I did. It started small, a few bets on football games, nothing serious, but then I won big once, and I thought I could do it again. By the time I realized I was in over my head, I owed people who don't accept "I'm sorry" as payment. Jessica knew about the debts, but she didn't make me steal from you. That was my choice. My weakness. My failure as a son and as a man. I told myself I was protecting the family, that if these people hurt me, it would hurt you and Mom too. But that was just an excuse. The truth is I was scared and selfish, and I took the easy way out instead of facing my problems like you taught me to. I know you probably can't forgive me. I'm not sure I deserve forgiveness. But I want you to know that I think about you every day, and I'm trying to become the man you raised me to be instead of the man I became. I'm pleading guilty to all charges. No trial, no excuses, no trying to blame anyone else. I did what they say I did, and I'll take whatever punishment the court decides. I love you, Dad. I know I don't have the right to say that anymore, but it's true. Tom. I read the letter 3 times, then folded it carefully and put it in my shirt pocket. Outside, the dogwood tree Mom had planted 20 years ago was starting to bloom, white flowers against the gray sky. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for the following week. Eleanor called to ask if I wanted to give a victim impact statement. What would I say? Whatever you want. How his actions affected you, what you've lost, what you'd like to see happen to him. I thought about it for days. What had I lost? My trust, certainly, my sense of security, my relationship with my son. But I'd also gained something, a deeper understanding of who I really was when everything else was stripped away. On the day of the hearing, I sat in the front row of the courtroom and watched my son stand before the judge. He looked older, thinner, worn down by months of shame and consequence. Jessica sat on the other side of the courtroom with her expensive lawyer still fighting the charges. When the judge asked if I wanted to speak, I stood up slowly. Your Honor, Tom Patterson is my son. For 42 years, I was proud to say that. He was a good boy who grew into a troubled man, and the choices he made hurt me deeply. I looked at Tom, who was staring at his feet. But I want this court to know that punishment isn't the only thing that matters here. What matters is whether he learns from this, whether he becomes someone who protects family instead of exploiting it, whether he chooses to be the man I raised him to be. I paused, gathering my thoughts. Tom has lost his relationship with me, with his children, with most of his family. He's lost his home, his reputation, and his freedom. Those are serious consequences for serious crimes, but they're also an opportunity to rebuild himself into someone better. I sat down without saying anything about the prison sentence I thought he deserved. That wasn't my job. My job was to speak the truth about what had happened and what I hoped might come next. The judge sentenced Tom to 18 months in minimum security prison and 3 years of probation. He'd have to pay full restitution, which meant giving up every asset he and Jessica had acquired with my money, and complete a gambling addiction program. Jessica got 6 months and probation, since she'd cooperated with investigators and helped recover some of the hidden assets. After the hearing, Tom's lawyer asked if I wanted to speak with him before he reported to prison. I thought about it, then shook my head. We'd said what needed to be said. Now he had to do the work of becoming someone worth talking to again. That summer, I hired a contractor to renovate Mom's house. Not because it needed it, but because I needed a project. Something to keep my hands busy while my heart healed. Amy came by most weekends to help. She was a good worker, and she asked thoughtful questions about carpentry and life in general. Her father was in minimum security, working in the prison library and taking classes. He was learning bookkeeping, she said, thinking he might try to make an honest living keeping books for small businesses when he got out. He writes to me every week, Amy told me one Saturday as we painted the back bedroom. Never asks for money or anything, just tells me what he's learning and asks about school. That's good. That's what a father should do. He asks about you too, whether you're doing okay, whether you're happy. I considered that. Was I happy? It was a harder question than it should have been. I wasn't the same man I'd been before all this happened. That man had been too trusting, too willing to let other people make decisions for him. This man was warier, more independent, less inclined to assume the best about people's motives. But I was also stronger, more sure of myself, less afraid of being alone, because I'd learned the difference between being alone and being abandoned. Tell him I'm doing fine, I said finally, and that I hope he's learning what he needs to learn. In September, I got a call from Eleanor. Tom's caseworker had contacted her about a supervised family visit program. Tom had requested permission to see me, not to ask for anything, but to apologize face to face. What do you think? Eleanor asked. I thought about it for a week. Then I called the prison and scheduled a visit. Tom looked smaller in his orange jumpsuit, older, but his eyes were clearer than I'd seen them in years, and when he spoke, he looked directly at me instead of at his hands. Thank you for coming. Amy said you wanted to apologize. I do, but not the kind of apology that expects forgiveness, the kind that just acknowledges what happened and takes responsibility for it. We talked for 30 minutes about his gambling addiction, his counseling, his plans for when he got out, about Amy and how proud he was of her for staying strong through all of this, about the job he hoped to get and the amends he wanted to make to the people he'd hurt. He didn't ask me to forgive him. He didn't ask for money or help or anything else. He just talked like a man who was trying to figure out how to be better than he'd been. When visiting time was over, I stood up to leave. Dad? I turned back. I know I can't undo what I did, but I want you to know that you raised me better than this. The man who stole from you wasn't the man you taught me to be. I'm trying to find that man again. I nodded and walked away. But for the first time in over a year, I felt something that might have been hope. Christmas that year was quiet. Amy, Mary, Billy, and a few close friends gathered at Mom's house for dinner and presents. We talked about Mom, about family, about the importance of choosing who you trust with your heart. Amy gave me a photo album she'd made, filled with pictures of our family from before everything went wrong. Pictures of Tom as a little boy, learning to fish and ride a bike and be a man. Pictures of him with Rose, with me, with the family that had loved him before he forgot how to love us back. I thought you might want to remember the good times too, Amy said. I flipped through the pages slowly, seeing my son as he used to be. The boy who helped me build a treehouse, who mowed lawns to save money for a bicycle, who cried when our dog died and asked if animals went to heaven. That boy was still in there somewhere. Maybe prison would help him find his way back. Maybe not. But for the first time since this whole mess started, I was willing to wait and see. On New Year's Eve, I sat in Mom's recliner with a glass of the good whiskey Eleanor had given me for Christmas. The house was quiet, except for the tick of the old clock on the mantel and the soft sound of snow hitting the windows. I thought about the year that was ending. The betrayal, the fight, the slow process of rebuilding my life on my own terms. I thought about family, the people who'd stood by me and the one who'd fallen away. I thought about trust and forgiveness and the difference between wisdom and bitterness. At midnight, I raised my glass to the photo of Rose on the side table. Happy New Year, sweetheart. Wish you were here to see how strong our boy turned out to be. Not Tom. Me. The boy Rose had married 43 years ago, who'd learned that sometimes the hardest thing about loving someone is letting them face the consequences of their choices. I was 70 years old, wealthy enough to live comfortably, and surrounded by people who loved me for who I was instead of what I could give them. It had been a hell of a year, but I was still standing. It's been 3 years now since that gray October morning when I walked down the courthouse steps with crumpled papers in my fist. 3 years since I discovered what my own son had done to me and what my mother had done to protect me. I'm sitting in Mom's kitchen chair as I tell you this story, the same chair where she used to snap green beans and balance her checkbook and plan my salvation without me even knowing it. The morning light is streaming through the window she used to stand at while washing dishes, watching the neighborhood wake up. Tom got out of prison 18 months ago. He's been working for a small accounting firm in the next county, keeping the books for farmers and shop owners who don't know his history. He sends me a letter every month, not asking for anything, just letting me know he's still trying to be better than he was. Amy graduated high school last spring, and I'm helping her pay for college. She wants to study social work, says she wants to help families stay together instead of falling apart. She still visits me every few weeks, and sometimes she brings letters from her father. Not to pressure me, just to keep me informed about his life. I haven't seen him face to face since that day at the prison. Maybe I will someday. Maybe I won't. That's a bridge I'll cross when I come to it. Jessica remarried 6 months after the divorce was final. Some businessman from 2 states over who doesn't know about her past. I feel sorry for him, but that's not my problem anymore. The house on Elm Street, my old house, sold to a nice young family with 3 kids. I drive by sometimes and see toys in the yard, bicycles on the sidewalk, the kind of life Rose and I used to have there. It makes me happy to see it being a home again instead of just a trophy. People ask me sometimes if I'm angry. If I hate my son for what he did to me, the answer is complicated. I'm not angry anymore. Anger is exhausting, and I'm too old to carry that weight. I don't hate him either. Hate would poison whatever years I have left, and I won't give him that power over me. What I am is careful. Careful about who I trust. Careful about who gets close enough to hurt me. I've learned that love and wisdom aren't the same thing, and that protecting yourself doesn't make you hard-hearted. I've also learned that family isn't just about blood. Mary, Billy, and Martha are my family. Amy is my family. Eleanor Morrison, who helped me fight back, is my family. The neighbors who check on me, the friends who invite me to dinner, the people who choose to care about an old man's well-being, they're all family too. The money Mom left me has been a blessing, but not in the way you might think. It's not the wealth that matters. It's the security, the knowledge that I can take care of myself, that I don't have to depend on anyone's charity or goodwill to live with dignity. That's worth more than any amount in a bank account. I think about Rose every day. About how she would have handled all this, what she would have said to Tom, whether she would have forgiven him faster than I have. I think she would have been proud of me for fighting back, for not letting them break me completely. And I think about Mom, wise, stubborn Rose Patterson, who saw trouble coming and built a fortress around her son without him even knowing it. She taught me that love isn't just about being kind and forgiving. Sometimes love means being strong enough to let people face the consequences of their choices. Sometimes love means saying no when it would be easier to say yes. The coffee in my cup has gone cold while I've been remembering, but I don't get up to reheat it. There's something peaceful about sitting here in the quiet, in the house where I learned right from wrong, surrounded by the love of a woman who protected me even from the grave. If you're listening to this story and you're my age, you probably recognize something in it. The fear of being forgotten, overlooked, taken advantage of when you're not as strong as you used to be. The worry that the people you raised and loved might see you as a burden instead of a blessing. All I can tell you is this: don't go gentle into that good night. Don't let anyone convince you that age makes you helpless or that grief makes you stupid. Trust your instincts, protect yourself, and remember that dignity isn't something someone gives you, it's something you keep for yourself. The dogwood tree outside Mom's kitchen window is blooming again, white flowers against the blue spring sky. In a few minutes, I'll get up and make fresh coffee and maybe call Amy to see how her classes are going. I'll water the garden Mom started and I've kept growing. I'll live another day of the life I fought to keep. That's enough. That's everything.